Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. Population, just over 5,000. And the place former firefighter Tim Heidler has always called home. For most of his adult life, Tim has sounded like this.
Not being able to talk, I think, is terrible. Next to being blind, not being able to see, but not being able to talk and communicate is very hard for anybody.
Tim lost his larynx in a terrible accident and was forced to use a voice box called an electrolarynx to speak.
Basically, it makes a tone by pushing the button, hand-eye coordination again, and using your lips and your tongue. You make these syllables, and you push the button, and use your lips and tongue at the right time, and that's basically how it works. You can't change the pitch and tone of it, and volume. You can go up and down to change different tones. Volume you can turn down. That's basically how it works.
Tim spoke normally until 1978, when a brutal incident robbed him of his voice. Riding to a fire training seminar, he takes an old logging trail. He has no way of knowing that someone has maliciously strung a cable across the road to stop bikers dead. Tim barely survived the accident. He eventually recovered from his injuries, but his larynx had been crushed by the cable and was irreparable. It seemed his voice was lost forever.
Imagine trying to call Domino's and order a pizza. Imagine pulling up to a drive-up window and ordering a hamburger. It doesn't work. People laugh at you.
For 20 frustrating years, Tim's only option was to speak through the electronic voice box. He continued to search for a better solution until a 1998 news story led him to Dr. Marshall Strome, a larynx specialist at the Cleveland Clinic Foundation. For years, Dr. Strome had been working to perfect a human larynx transplant, something that had never been accomplished. He was finally ready for his first patient, and Tim Heidler was a perfect candidate.
I thought I'd never find a candidate because four of us sat down with him and said, look, you could die with this operation. Why do you want to do it? People are going to say, you know, you're talking with an electrolarynx, your life is good. Why do you want to do this operation? I also told them that if you look at the history of transplantation where immunosuppression had been used, no organ had really survived long term. And why should I think that this one would potentially be different? I was hoping it'd be different because I'd done years of research suggesting that we could get them to last a long time. Could I guarantee it? No.
In transplant surgery, the biggest danger is the donor organ itself. The recipient's immune system naturally attacks it as a foreign invader. To sidestep the body's natural defenses, doctors use drugs to suppress the recipient's immune system. This can cause even the smallest infection to become fatal. For Tim, it was worth the risk. With the doctor and patient in place, a non-diseased larynx must now be located and harvested from a corpse. In an extremely delicate operation, the donor larynx, as well as other throat tissue, will replace what Tim lost in 1978. Even so, there is no guarantee that it will function once he recovers. The search for the ideal donor takes months.
We'd been screening for approximately 6 months. And I'd passed on a lot of donors because I didn't think they were perfect.
Then, on January 3rd, 1998, 40-year-old Matt Douglas dies unexpectedly from an aneurysm. For his family, the tragedy of Matt's sudden death is mitigated by the fact that he is a perfect donor for the transplant. Doctors mobilize. The next day at 8 a.m., they begin the groundbreaking process of trying to restore Tim's voice.
There were a lot of pitfalls in this surgery that as many times as you do it on animals, there are challenges that we didn't have the answer for. For example, in order to put the larynx in, you have to set it in the throat. Well, how much muscle of that throat can you actually set in and expect it to swallow? If you make it too tight, then the suture line could potentially break down, leak, and become infected. And in the face of immunosuppression, the potential was there for that infection to be overwhelming.
For the first 8 hours, Dr. Strom and his team performed the delicate surgery.
Yeah, we can open them.
The procedure requires an extra 3 hours because Dr. Strom attaches the donor larynx outside of Tim's throat first.
You're gonna have to take it though.
In removing the damaged larynx, we had to be careful not to disturb the new blood supply that we'd established with the donor organ.
The challenges posed by this larynx transplant were enormous. Tim's throat had been so badly damaged in the accident, he needed much more than a larynx.
And we took 5 rings of this windpipe because his windpipe was crushed as well. Well, in order to maintain the blood supply that we needed, I felt it was necessary to transplant the thyroid gland, and with that came the little parathyroid glands.
After 12.5 hours, the team puts in the final sutures. Tim has survived the surgery, but there's only one question. Will he be able to speak?
It's just really swollen above, and
The best thing Tim can do to help restore his speech is to remain absolutely silent. After an anxious 2.5 days, doctors ask their patient to speak.
okay, one more breath. Now the high mom.
Tim Heidler, using a transplanted larynx, speaks for the first time in 20 years.
It was a very coarse quality voice that is nothing like what he has now, and wasn't even made with his vocal folds, but just the top of the voice box fluttering. And he had tears in his eyes.
3 weeks later, Tim meets the press.
The possibilities are really unknown.
To allow access to his new larynx in case of complications, doctors decide to keep his trachea open. In order to speak, Tim has to cover the hole to force air through the transplanted larynx. Yet it's a miracle that he can speak at all.
Being able to speak again is going to change my whole life. I'm the recipient, but without a donor, without a doctor, and without faith, it wouldn't have worked. And, here it is. And a lot of people said it wouldn't work. Well, it worked. It's just amazing. It's incredible. I mean, just amazing.
Today, after years of recovery, Tim sounds almost completely normal. But the struggles of being voiceless for 2 decades still haunt him.
A lot of it's hard to explain because people take their voice for granted. I mean, it's part of a normal life to be able to talk. And when that disappears, your body just starts to fall apart. You lose all your self-esteem. You don't feel good about yourself. And you just basically give up on life.
Curiously, Tim does not sound like the organ donor.
Yeah, so far so good. Everything's doing good. I don't sound like the donor because we have audio tapes of him. And he was a very large man. And he had a real low voice. And I have 2 brothers and 4 sisters. And we think, if anything, I sound like my dad.
What makes us sound the way we do is the shape of our mouth, the amount of space that we have in our head to resonate, which is why our voice boxes can be very different in terms of dimension sometimes, but we sound very much like one of our parents.
Today is a very good day.
Great, you're doing just perfectly.
As you can notice, you run the pitch way up.
He has pitch, he has inflection, he has a totally normal speaking voice. Yeah, it is. It's amazing. The results are really beyond my wildest dreams.
I feel so much better being able to speak again. It's great. My outlook on life is, I keep going and going and going. I mean, I don't feel down anymore. I mean, it's one of the greatest things that has ever happened to me.
Although Tim endured 20 years with a robotic voice,
I'm a fighter. That's what I am.
today Tim speaks and can even sing with a voice he can call his own.
In the land of the free and the home of the brave.